welcome back to another episode of Hail Yes, a Michigan football and basketball podcast by the Detroit Free Press. I am Andrew Burkle, of course, joined by our Michigan beat writer, Tony Garcia. And Tony, it's rivalry week, man. It's here, and it's not as exciting as we had hoped at the start of the season, but at least the Wolverines were able to create a little buzz on their end by a comfortable win over Washington. So how do you think Michigan's playing coming into this week?
Very well, which is not what we thought we'd be saying a week ago, right? When all the questions coming out of Southern California were the direction of the program, not just the offense wasn't showing improvement, but the defense was showing regression. There were what seemed like some legitimate concerns. And then all they do is follow that back up with what I wrote earlier this week or over the weekend was, in my estimation, the most well-rounded performance of the Sherrone Moore era. I mean, there were bigger wins, right? Alabama, Ohio State, of course. But those were not more well-rounded wins. Like the Ohio State win, they scored one touchdown and they started on the 2-yard line, like the opponent's 2-yard line, not a 98-yard drive. And so it was some long field goals. It was fantastic defense, but it was not a holistic performance. This was. Offense looked good. Defense looked good. Other than Zavada missing another kick on special teams, there was a nice punt by Hudson Hollenbeck, and those little things are going to matter in all the big games coming down the stretch. So overall, I think they're very pleased with themselves. The word to Sherrone Moore today, as we record Monday, October 20th, the word Sherrone Moore said of the day was urgency. They can be happy about the win. They cannot be complacent. They need to make sure that they keep their foot on the gas. And one way to do that is to play a team that you do not like very much. And that's what we got on tap.
Yep. It's the test of a truly mature program, I guess I would say. And you saw it last week since with Indiana against Michigan State, right? Like that was the letdown spot of all letdown spots for the Hoosiers. And they kept the foot on the gas against Michigan State and really crushed them in every facet in a clean game, right? That's the sign of a mature program. And can Michigan do the same and keep their focus against a team who, the emotions seem to always boil up, especially in games in Ann Arbor the last few years, but maybe it will be a little different this year. But because the last two incidences have happened at Michigan Stadium, who the heck knows? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to why these things happen, but it's going to be a test for Michigan to not get ahead of themselves, right? Not put the cart before the horse in a way with the team of Michigan State's caliber, who's now 3-4, lost 4 straight. And that's going to be what it's going to be on Sherrone to sell that message. And hey, this is a game we can't mess around with. And I think he literally started that in the press conference after the game. I was reading your stuff and he said, I want to go look at the film on Michigan State right now. He was ready to roll right then and there. So he's already started discussing that, but it's always, of course, you're talking about college age kids, right? Can you get that message to click home? And we can go schematics and we will in a minute, but I think that's ultimately the big question this week, right?
Yeah, no, definitely is. And I mean, it's not just college age kids. This is still the transfer portal era, right? And so you've got your star running back, Justice Haynes, is getting his first taste of the rivalry. Your best wide receiver, Donovan McCulley, has not played in this game. And there needs to be an understanding on both sides, either side that you're on, that one of the most important aspects is understanding what this game means. I feel like a player now, speaking in a cliche, but cliches are cliche for a reason, right? And I think, you could even argue if you go back to the game last year, that's probably a game that a Mark D'Antonio coached Michigan State team wins, right? But Jonathan Smith just felt like he did not have the vibe of it at all. Sherrone Moore has been in this rivalry for a number of years. We were asking him about it today. Like, what was your introduction to the rivalry? It was 2018 Devin Bush. And he was the one, he said, I had to hold Devin Bush back from trying to fight half their team at midfield in 2018, a game that Michigan ultimately won 21-7. So he's like, I got indoctrinated into it pretty quickly. And so you got to be aware. You got to, and pregame, postgame, in-game, keeping your emotions right at the surface, but not bubbling over. It is a fine line to walk, but the team that walks that line better often wins, even if you are not more talented, right? Like, I think if you go back to even the years where Michigan State was winning this game, I don't know how a handful of them, right? In the down Brady Hoke years and the up D'Antonio years, yeah, Michigan State had some better teams, but Michigan State won like 10 of 13 years or something like that, or 10 of 14 years. They did not have a better team 10 times. I'd say 5 of those times they had a better team. And 5 times they just found a way.
I mean, it depends on your definition of a team, right? Are you talking about like results? Are we talking recruiting ranking? Are we talking NFL prospects? Because I think in a lot of those seasons that when Michigan State would win, they would typically finish with a better record. Like I don't remember many years where Michigan State was like, they would usually come in with a similar record, right? And then from there, the season would go their separate ways by who would win. I feel like that's how I would define the mid 2000s games and the early 2020, in the late 2000s games. Those are kind of like what I would say was the D'Antonio edge, right? Like it wasn't like they ever had more talent per se, but what's your definition of a team, right?
Yeah, no, fair. But I guess, I mean, it started in the late 2000s, right? Because right now, Michigan, obviously, winners of 3 in a row.
Yes.
This is the first time Michigan has won 3 games in a row since they won 6 straight from 02 to 07. And then things flipped from 08 to 15, or really 08 to 17. MSU got 8 of 10 in that run.
And then since then, it's been just as much Michigan domination, really.
Yeah, Michigan has swung the pendulum back. And the one year that, I mean, what you said is true by and large, but the one year that did not hold true was 2021. So Michigan State wins that game. And then that was Michigan's like resounding moment, bouncing back from that game, winning a tight, tough, had to have it game against Penn State on the Eric All drag across the field late in the fourth quarter in Happy Valley, and then beating the Buckeyes for the first time in a decade. And that is what catapulted Michigan into those elite runs, their bounce back from that game. But Michigan is playing well going into it. And that's really what's important.
Yeah, it's really incredible looking back at that 2021 game because it was Mel Tucker's second game against Jim Harbaugh, and it was his second win. And it felt like something like, oh my goodness, like this is really, Michigan State just has that magic juice over Michigan right now. It's just how it is, right? And it felt like almost like a moment. And it ended up being the exact opposite type of moment of what you would expect at the time, right? Since then, the two programs have gone in complete opposite ways. Michigan's gone on to win a national championship and own their Ohio State and their rivalry. And Michigan State has just like flummoxed in mediocrity or worse ever since. It's just been a complete turn in the exact opposite way that you would thought it was at the time. It's still so hard to understand from when I remember what everybody was feeling when that game was going on. Michigan fans furious, Harbaugh can't win the big game, to all complete opposite ever since, essentially. Obviously, Michigan went 7-5. It's not like Michigan dominated last year, but they won the rivalry, won a bowl game, and still kept the momentum going. And land Underwood in the offseason, it still feels like they had all the momentum.
Well, I mean, since that 21 season, that game earned Mel Tucker a $75, $80, $90 million contract, whatever it was. Then he gets fired in disgrace. Michigan hasn't lost in the rivalry since. They haven't lost to Ohio State since. They've won 3 Big Ten titles. They've gone to 3 college football playoffs. They've won a Rose Bowl, won a national championship. I don't think Michigan State has played for a bowl game. They haven't even had a 500 season.
I mean, if you count the bowl game from the season that they won that game, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, after that year. Yeah, after that. Yeah, after that year.
Yeah, but yeah, it's exactly. It's been incredible. It's incredible. And it shows you, and there's another example in college football right now happening where you look at Florida State and Alabama, right? It's so easy to overreact. Like I remember I was hanging out with friends watching that game and I was like, oh man, this DeBoer thing might not last as long as we thought in Alabama. That was the takeaway and it had to be, right? And since then, now Mike Norvell is on the verge of getting fired, and Kalen DeBoer is once again, if not one of the best, if not the best coach in college football with a team completely rolling in Tuscaloosa. So it's crazy how fast these things can change. And even going back 365 days or however many days ago it was last year, do you remember every single member of our staff picked Michigan State because the Spartans had rolled Iowa the week before? And then next thing you know, Michigan State completely crumbles and hasn't had a moment since that game. I mean, it's been awful in East Lansing.
Yeah, I think they were both 4-3 going into that game, and Michigan had lost 2 in a row. They looked horrible after their bye week. MSU had won after its bye week, and it felt like and really it was because of Michigan's quarterback play, right? Like I remember my rationale. It's just like they just can't move the ball. But you win the turnover battle. And Michigan State, I mean, they had more, if you look back last year, they had more total yards, more first downs, more time of possession. I think a better third down per conversion percent. I mean, they won so many important stats. They have won the rushing battle, which had determined the winner of the game in like 56 of the last 61 years, and Michigan overcame all of it, right? And so that game was closer.
the big play stat, right? Like all the big plays were made by Michigan. You remember Childs going into halftime and turning that into points the opposite way. It's just like all the big moments were won by the Wolverines, and it almost gave them, it seems like a game of confidence going forward that they kind of used against Ohio State, that it might be ugly, it might not look pretty, but you're going to find a way, right? And that seems like it's kind of still have the same energy, although it hasn't always worked. But, USC, of course, Oklahoma, the 2 losses this year where Michigan looked kind of flat. But, at the same time, that Washington game, I'm not sure that that is a game Michigan wins last year, as ugly as it was for the first half, and just kind of floating around in that, who makes the plays range. And Michigan made the plays, right? So to rewind a little bit here, Michigan enters at 5-2 and is in pretty good shape considering some tough losses in there, and is playing pretty well. But what did you think were the biggest takeaways from that win at the Big House? And why do you think it's kind of changed the narrative once again here in a season of up and downs?
For me, I think the biggest takeaway was that the defense, what I always ask myself when I see something go wrong is like, is this a blip or is this a trend? It looks more like a blip at this point, right? The defensive struggles. Michigan always wants to win the ground game on both sides of the ball, week in, week out. All teams do, but that's like Michigan's bread and butter, right? And 1 week after giving up 224 rushing yards to a previous walk-on at USC, they held one of the best dual threat rushing attacks in Jonah Coleman, who led the nation in touchdowns, and Damon Williams, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the not just the Big Ten, but like kind of anywhere. You could start talking in the country. I mean, he is really dynamic. They held them to 23 carries for 40 yards. I mean, just a masterpiece. The run fits were there, alignment, assignment, angles, the 3 A's, all there. AAA, car insurance. I mean, not car insurance. What is it? AAA. I mean, it's like roadside assistance.
Roadside assistance.
Yeah. And Michigan had all the ground game assistance in this one, and it is reflected in all over the numbers. Right. Washington had 9 punts in 6 games entering play. They punted 4 times in Ann Arbor this weekend. Damon Williams had thrown 1 interception all year. He was picked off 3 times in the final 18 minutes of the game. I mean, it was just so many big plays. Derek Moore, really, finally sort of the Derek Moore when he was talking in the offseason, like, I haven't really gotten my bag. Like, I'm really more confident this year, going to show it. That was the Derek Moore that I was expecting for a long time this year. And he was fantastic. And of course, it was the linebackers with the big plays. Cole Sullivan, Sherrone Moore has said it. It just feels like, this guy is always in the right place. And when Michigan needs a play to be made, more than his share, it is Sullivan doing the playmaking. He picked off Williams, returned it to the 14-yard line. When Washington had the ball, this game was 7-7, late third, and it felt like Michigan might not find a way to pull this one out. He completely turned the tide. 1 play later, Jordan Marshall runs it in. Then 2 chunk plays by Washington. They're into Michigan territory. And then this one was just a bad pass by Williams, and Jimmy Rolder laughed about it after the game. He's like, honestly, I was kind of late getting to my spot. He's like, but sometimes but if the ball's in your area and there's a play to be made, you got to make it. And he did. The pass was thrown well behind the intended tight end over the middle. Rolder sticks his arms out, pick. Michigan goes 9 plays, 62 yards, and scores a touchdown. And the man who scored that touchdown, Zach Marshall, the other Marshall, I wrote a story in our winners. We called it the law firm of Marshall and Marshall, because really Jordan Marshall and Zach Marshall hadn't done all that much this year. Certainly Zach Marshall hadn't, and Jordan Marshall had been a distant second in the backfield. They really sort of carried this one. Leading rusher, leading receiver, combined for over 200 total yards and a pair of touchdowns in a game that had 31 total points. They were fantastic. And that's really another thing that stood out to me beyond the defense is Michigan stepping up with so many injuries that were not expected, right? Like Haynes doesn't play. That was pretty expected. Marshall has the best game of his career. Michigan without probably its top 2 reliable safeties in Rod Moore and Brandon Hillman. TJ Metcalf has a nice game. Mason Curtis, you don't really notice out there. And if you're the back line of defense and you're not noticing him, that's more often than not a good thing, right? Like you don't have to change the game. You just can't be getting beat. He didn't. Their top 2 tight ends were out. Marlon Klein, Hogan Hansen. We just talked about Zach Marshall. Zach Marshall had 3 grabs for 29 yards in his career coming in. He had 5 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. That is the definition of seizing your moment, right? Like that's just fantastic. They lost Evan Link in the middle of the game. Blake Frazier comes in and he has a really monster performance. Well, not a monster performance, but clean, Very clean. He had the best Pro Football Focus pass blocking grade. Didn't allow a single pressure on like 27 dropbacks. And then, I mean, Rayshon Benny they lost late, and fortunately for them, I mean, there's just so much depth on specifically on the interior of the defensive line. You almost didn't notice it, and so most of these guys should be good to go. Link will not play this week, but Sherrone said they avoided what they sort of thought was kind of what it looked like on the field, right? And it sounds like there's a moderate to pretty decent chance he plays again this year, and that's just a huge, huge boost. Rod Moore, they'll see about. Brandon Hillman, they'll see about. Both are expected to practice. Same with Klein, Hansen, Haynes. A lot of these guys are kind of questionable throughout the week, and it's how their body responds. And then Ernest Hausman is the last one. He got dinged up, but Sherrone said he's fine, and it sounds like he will play. But I've thought people would play before and they didn't. So really, it's just the defense, the injuries. I want to give you a chance to respond to that before I have my last point of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we almost didn't even touch on Evan Link, right? Where that felt like a huge moment. Like, oh man! And when he went down, the announcers on the broadcast were like, "This is a young Michigan team out there right now, right? You know, you got a freshman quarterback." You have the best pass catcher the last few weeks has been outside of Zach Marshall. Andrew Marsh has been looking great, right? That's a true freshman receiver. So when you lose players like Evan Link on the offensive line, you would think that there'd be a bit of a drop off. And, you know, I'm trying to balance internally here between a game in the first half where it was 7-7 at the break and the game in the second half when you outscore them 17-0. But they played their best when all these guys went down. Right. So if anything, it's a pat on the back. It's a job well done for overcoming and showing that adversity. Right. I mean, I don't know why there's some of that inconsistency sometimes where Michigan the offense kind of just stalls out. And maybe it's just as simple as true freshman quarterback. Right. But at the end of the day, they're continuing to make plays and find a way to win in games, especially at home here. Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you spelled it out really well. I mean, a lot of that inconsistency, right? It's not just true freshman quarterback, but Blake Frazier now, freshman left tackle, Andrew Sprague, redshirt freshman right tackle, Zach Guinera, right guard. He's underclassman as well. Jordan Marshall. It feels like he's kind of been a mainstay now. He's a redshirt freshman. He didn't play until late in the season last year. So you look around, there's 2 offensive linemen, a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, who all are very young in this game. I mean, Sherrone Moore has said the stat a couple times. Michigan is like the youngest team in the Big Ten in terms of like those who played, and they're winning with a lot of, and they've had to do it on the other side of the ball, right? Too, with Jaden Sanders playing meaningful snaps, Elijah Dotson playing meaningful snaps. Cole Sullivan is a redshirt freshman who we've talked about ad nauseum. We've seen Nate Marshall on the defensive line make some plays. So this is definitely a young group, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's been darn good a lot of the time, and so they deserve a ton of credit for it. And speaking of one of those young players, the youngest one on the team, the star quarterback, Bryce Underwood had his best game of the year, right? Like that is also no small thing at all. He was 21 of 27 for 232 yards and 2 touchdowns. And of those 6 incompletions, 2 were drops. So this could have been 23 of 27 just in that regard. He was the highest graded freshman in Pro Football Focus this week. And while he didn't have a ton of wow plays, he had one, this 3rd and 11, where he was under pressure, drop back foot, and just threads the needle, layers it between the 2nd and 3rd level of the defense, right in the breadbasket of Deacon Sinelli. That was just one of his best throws of the entire year, without question, in my opinion. But other than that, 20 of his 27 pass attempts were either behind the line of scrimmage or inside of 10 yards. And so while that is dinking and dunking and it's like, all right, like but we're supposed to be seeing like this big arm and these big plays. I think that is a sign of growth in my mind, just taking what the defense gives you, not forcing it. He had 3 big Pro Football Focus's grades things as big time throws. And he had 3, which are like plays that are above and beyond what could be expected. And he had no turnover worthy plays, right? That's a phenomenal ratio. I think last year Michigan it was somewhere between 12 and 14 big time throws in 13 games. And he had 3 in one game. So that's really good. And Andrew, I wanted to quiz you after these 2 stats. When he was kept clean, 18 of 24 for 175 yards and both touchdowns. And he was able to handle the blitz. 8 of 10, 114 and both touchdowns came against the blitz. So that's also a credit to the offensive line, picking up the blitz and not letting him feel pressure. But Andrew, what do you think his average depth of target was in this game?
Give me a clue. Was it longer or shorter than you would think?
I don't even want to give you a clue. I just gave you the numbers about how he wasn't forcing it really very far downfield.
12 yards?
Try again. Way lower.
4?
4.3.
Oh man,
4.3 yards.
So that's on the that's the coaching staff getting him some layups, right? I mean, that's where that's where the job was accomplished. Chip Lindsey getting some easy throws.
Exactly, and Underwood taking them, right? I mean, it's really easy to want to show off that you're Superman or Batman or whichever superhero he is. I think it is Batman. He was given the Batman mask. It sits in his locker now. But he's not forcing it. He doesn't need to save Gotham City. He doesn't need to save Ann Arbor every time. Just here and there. He's got to pick his spots. And so Bryce was fantastic.
I see Bryce, saving the city with his legs in the pocket a lot of times right now. I think that's where you see him making the plays that Davis Warren and Jack Tuttle and Alex Orji was able to make those plays, but he couldn't throw the ball down the field, right? So I think that's where he's a superhero right now. And that is absolutely, exactly what you would want from a coaching staff, right? It's like, hey, use those legs in the pocket, make some plays, maybe miss a defender, get yourself a window to make the throw, and don't be a hero in trying to, win the game with a deep pass to Diamond McCulley down the sidelines. Take Zach Marshall over the middle if you have to, right? That. I think that's where he had his best game as a Wolverine, as you said, right? Was combining those two skill sets what game was it? I can't remember what game it was, but I remember thinking to myself, okay, man, he's kind of taking off pretty quickly here and running a couple times. And so I like the balance that he struck this week,
Might have been Central. I mean, Central was the game he was really running. Nebraska, he did a bit too.
It was the Nebraska game a little bit where he was kind of he was like, oh, and that they won the game, right? And he did enough, scored 30 points on the road. You do what you got to do, right? But I think that he's kind of been finding that balance as every freshman quarterback who plays does of this is when I run, this is when I take off, this is when I use my legs to throw, right? And I think he's slowly finding that balance.
Yeah. Last thought. I mean, he's progressing, right? This is what you want to see. And he's not doing sort of what I would call the Caleb Williams, the Dylan Raiola, which is just scramble, go right, go left, circle around and do all this stuff and that's why those quarterbacks are sacked so often. It's because they know they have elite talent and they're always trying to make a play instead of settling for what's right in front of them. They're always trying to make the home run play. When a common phrase you hear even in football, it's the baseball line, but hit singles. Just hit singles, keep the line moving, and you don't need a 5-run home run. It's all good. Or trying to hit a 3-run home run with no one on base. And so Bryce, I gave him an A post game. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that he's pretty good at being on time, right? That's what the phrase that coaches like to use as far as the offense is running on time. He's not doing the Caleb Williams, oh boy, scramble drill every single time. The only point of growth that he's still working on, I think his thing is throwing the ball a little too much heat sometimes. So sometimes there'll be a pass on first down, right? Okay, so now it's second down, 2nd and 10. Then you hand it off. Now it's 3rd and 10, right? I think that's kind of sometimes how I notice Michigan's offense getting a little behind the sticks. Not so much of him taking a sack and putting the offense behind in that realm. It's more so ooh, he probably should have feathered that one in a little more. And Klatt touched on that in this game. There was a pass he threw way too hard early, and then on a rollout to his right,
the crosser to Zach Marshall.
Yeah, and then on a rollout to his right later in the game, he kind of just dinked it, just enough heated to get there, but not so much. And I want to say it was Samaj Morgan caught it and on the move and was able to pick up a first down. And Joel was like, this is growth in game that you're seeing where he's finding that balance. So, it's fun to watch at every game and seeing as he grows each week and talking with you on the podcast about we're seeing this, but not this. And it's not always linear, right? He could play bad this week and it doesn't necessarily mean he's not growing, right? We kind of saw that against USC, right? He played better in the Washington game than he did in the Wisconsin game and played worse in the USC game, right? So he played worse in the USC game than he did in the Wisconsin game, right? So it's not always linear, but he is growing as the season is going on. So it's been fun to watch and will continue to be fun to watch as Michigan should have, as we'll get to in a minute here, some more opportunities for Bryce to continue to show his growth and not necessarily playing teams who are going to overmatch them. So let's take a quick break. We'll talk about Michigan State on the other side and some of the big picture questions surrounding this Michigan team. So we'll talk to you guys in just a second. Welcome back, everybody. And we're here to talk about Michigan State and Michigan. 7:30 kickoff on NBC. Neither of us were probably too thrilled to hear that, but the fans who are going to be in East Lansing, who particularly might be sporting green and white, I'm sure they weren't too upset about it because at least it gives them some more festivities to participate in outside of the game that may get ugly. The Wolverines are a 14.5 point favorite. We'll pick the game here later on. But things aren't going well in East Lansing, man. The Spartans were lost for the second straight week of this exact same score, 38-13. And for the second straight year, these two teams appear to be heading in opposite directions, but somehow the teams have flipped. It's completely like the opposite of last year. And it's just a very interesting dynamic. Obviously, Jonathan Smith's job security has been the talk of the town here in the state as far as Michigan State. It's another one of those weird feeling games, kind of like the sign stealing game back the last game in East Lansing, where it's just like so many outside storylines between Mel Tucker and Harlan Barnett coaching that team, and the sign stealing scandal for Michigan had just broken. I just get a kind of a similar vibe where it's like the story is not even really about the game that much this week, and I can't put a finger on exactly why that is.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when one of the teams is not very good, right? I mean, we didn't have these problems in 2015. I mean, Michigan had its own problems at the end of that game, but both teams are top 10. Or I think 2017, both teams were pretty good, and 2021, both teams were quite good, right? And coincidentally, Michigan State actually won all three of those games. But it's just, I mean, when there's not a lot of juice, when it's not one of those top 10 matchups, 2012, I think both teams were decent. And so it was still about the game, and Michigan won with 4 field goals in Ann Arbor. And so it's hard to get both these teams rolling at the same time. And when that's not happening, if one of them's not rolling, there's going to be outside noise about what's going on in the program. And so I think that's certainly part of it. And Michigan State, I mean, just cannot get out of its own way.
Yeah. And I considered the spread part of what made it weird to me, because usually this game is going to be somewhere under a touchdown, or like Michigan by like 21.5, or like Michigan State was 27.5 point underdogs against Indiana last week, right? Where it's like 14. Michigan, we're still kind of trying to figure out where this Michigan team stands in the national landscape, right? Like they got back in the top 25 this week after falling out 1 week. Their best win was against Washington, who I still don't even know. I thought they were good, but their biggest games they've lost, right? So it's like, how good is Washington? You can start playing that game where like you start questioning, like, is anyone good, right? And I think Michigan kind of is the epitome of that team right now, right? Where it's like their wins are against the teams they probably should have beaten. And so it's just kind of very hard to place this Michigan team, which then makes it hard to exactly know what to expect in this game. You know what I mean? Like, obviously Michigan State can't get out of their own way. So that in itself kind of tells you what the direction is. But I'm almost left wondering, like, why is that spread not even a little higher?
Yeah, no, I can see. I was going to say, I mean, I think a lot of this is unfolding not terribly, and not in some clairvoyant crystal ball sort of way, but none of this to me personally feels terribly unexpected, right? Losing at Oklahoma, losing at USC, could see both of those things preseason. This is exactly where I had Michigan going into this game. Michigan State, they were not good last year. They didn't get notably better this year. I didn't know how they were going to, I mean, they were 4-3 last year. Maybe you'd think they'd be 4-3 again this year, something like that, but not a ton of juice. I'd say no juice, really. And so and just in terms of Michigan in the greater landscape, I think they are good, not great. And I think Michigan State is bad, not okay, right? And so you get a couple touchdown sort of score. But rivalry, I think. So if this is not Michigan in coming to East Lansing, and it is, say it's USC, I think actually, I guess that would have been kind of the same, because wasn't Michigan State like 20.5 point, or were they 17.5 something, 17, 20?
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
And so if you play that in East Lansing, maybe it flips by between 3 and 6 points. And so I guess it's kind of the same point. I was thinking,
yeah,
the odds makers are maybe respecting, quote, using that word loosely, Michigan State just in the rivalry spot, right? Like even when Auburn is down and Bama is up, if they're playing in Auburn, right, at Jordan Hare, it is tough for Bama to just go in there and steamroll them. Like this year, I think might be one of those instances where everybody's going to be picking Alabama, and I wouldn't pick against them. But it's just hard to win a rivalry game by multiple scores when even if you're on the road, no less. And so, especially when Michigan State has nothing left to play for, literally nothing. Like, I mean, you could say they're playing to save their coach's life, but I think they might put some Vaseline on their hand and he might just slip off that cliff, right? Like, they might not be tightening that grip. They might be ready to let him go. And so they just want to win because they want to beat Michigan.
I would say that after this week, that would be fair to say. There's been nothing from the players that I've read that indicates that would be a fair statement to say. I think they still like Smith. Say what you want about him, but if anything, he's probably too nice, So I don't think that there's a huge dislike for Jonathan Smith among the players. And I think this would be the last.
Maybe the fan base is ready to drop him off the cliff is more accurate.
Yeah, I think that this would be the last hoorah for those players, right? You could easily convince, you've been in locker rooms, you know what it's like, right? You could see how you spin it forward for these MSU players. And it's like, this is what you come to MSU for. You get back to this, you win this, you're 500. There's a million different ways you can spin this game, right? So I think that this game, particularly after this one, if they lose and they get blown out, it's going to be really hard to get up. But this one, I think they'll still be able to have the juice for. And maybe that's enough to save Jonathan Smith's job. I don't think it's going to be in the grand scheme of things, but it's just kind of a weird game to talk about. And the other element that I guess I kind of realized what I was feeling is that, like, if you talk to any Michigan State fan, they'll tell Michigan fans, like, we hate this team more than you hate this team, man. Trust me. Like, we're having a worse time with this team than you are. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
oh, Michigan fans are having a ball.
There's no like, oh man, like, don't you say that about my quarterback. Don't you say that about my coach, right? Like, that dismay is already felt from Michigan State fans about their own team. You know what I mean? So it's almost like you don't even know how that dynamic is going to feel this year. It's kind of a unique situation, at least in my time around and following these teams super closely, right? Like, you had the Mel Tucker era where MSU fans always felt like they had a fighting chance because Mel started off 2-0. You had the D'Antonio era where MSU fans always felt like they were going to win and, ride or die D'Antonio. And then these last few years have just been like something totally different that, I was born in 96. So I think D'Antonio was hired in 2007, right? So I was 11 years old. My basically entire memories of this are D'Antonio on from the Michigan State rivalry, right? So it's like, I just don't remember a time where the game has really fallen into this particular area where it's just kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's just kind of a weird vibe.
Yeah. Well, I'm just a little bit older than you. I was born in 93 and obviously growing up in Ann Arbor.
As we both did.
Yes, right. I remember those early days.
Braylon Edwards, Mike Hart.
Oh, yeah. And Jason Avant, Chad Henne, and
I guess that would maybe be the most comparable, right? Where Michigan State is just not very good and Michigan should win.
And that was a different John Smith, right? That was John L. Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I guess the John L. Smith is probably the most comparable time period, right? Where it's just like this program doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. There's some talent. Michigan better not mess around because Nick Marsh is good enough to score the point, so score some points and move the ball on Michigan, right? Like, Michigan State's got some talent. It's just that there's gaping holes and inconsistency from top down, right? So Michigan should win. Just from institutional standpoint, right? Just from Michigan State, 1 week will be a disaster on special teams. The next week's they're a disaster on defense. The next week they can't move the ball and Aiden Childs has 40 yards, right? Like, there's just no consistency there. Whereas Michigan, some of their shortcomings over the last few years have been fairly consistent. You kind of know what they do and they do that thing well.
Really? So my questions in this game come down to, can Michigan's defense have almost the same game plan against Childs that they did against Williams, right? Like Sherrone was saying today, like, he is a guy that you have to have your eyes on at all times. This is not someone that you can't just be looking at your man. Like, you need either a spy or you need some help in the second layer. Something has to happen where he is not escaping and making plays with his legs. If he's going to beat you, it has to be one-dimensionally. It has to be through the air. And if they're going to beat you on the ground, it can only be the running back. And you just can't let Childs beat you with his legs because that's what he wants to do, right? Like, that's how the few times when Michigan State is moving the ball or is staying in a game, it's often Aiden Childs ad-libbing and making just like really good plays because he's a really talented quarterback by and large. And so that's a huge talking point or focus on.
The thing that I'm going to be watching for is Bryce Underwood and the passing attack against this MSU defense, because the quarterbacks that they've really struggled against have been the very precise passers who are able to just pick you apart one time after another. Mendoza, I mean, things couldn't have looked easier for Mendoza last week, right? Similar for Jaden Mayaba, just precise. If you leave the guys open, because there's a lot of communication issues. And so that's going to be the test for Bryce in this Michigan attack is, when MSU has that miscommunication between the linebackers and there's someone running in a shallow wide open, because it's going to happen. I've watched every Michigan and Michigan State game this year. It's going to happen. There's going to be a time where that secondary and those linebackers look disorganized. Can he put the right speed on it? Can he get the guy leading him and just pick this MSU defense apart one throw at a time? And that'll be a really big test for him, instead of trying to play hero or maybe throwing the ball a little too hard, and really getting that consistent accuracy like he showed for the most part against Washington, right?
I expect him to. I would expect, he has not been wild with the football. There's not a ton of overthrows. There's nothing that's in danger. And
I mean, he was he was in last place in the Big Ten in accuracy coming into this week, right? He had a good week against Washington, so it wasn't like he was
correct,
the epitome of accuracy before.
Right. But the adjusted, his team was also second in drops, right? So the adjusted catch rate, even though he was 59 points.
But that also is what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like if Samaj Morgan is running wide open, he can't drop that pass. Like that's going to be the story of this game being 24, 25, 30 points, or, maybe closer to the 14 to who knows, right? I think that's going to be the test. If those guys if Michigan's passing attack, receivers, pass catchers, and Underwood with the touch, if they're able to match that up, it's not going to be a problem to move this ball against Michigan State. But we have seen at times that has been a problem for them, occasionally.
Yep. Yeah. Michigan State's pass D has allowed 17 passing touchdowns. They are giving up 251 yards per game through the air. And that is on average. And they've played teams like Youngstown State and...
Yeah, Youngstown State had their way with them.
Central or Western.
No, Western didn't have that great of an...
No, but I'm saying that's considering those averages, right? Which means Big Ten teams are throwing for more like 300.
But Youngstown State eat them up.
Well, that's a concern. If Youngstown State is eating you up, what do you think? Michigan, right? And so
the only thing I would say is that is that Raiola and a quarterback who they're going to have to be on time, because Raiola, the only time this year
they did play Maeva, they did play USC.
The only time this year that Michigan State's defense has looked like a passable unit was against Nebraska on the road. Now they still allowed, how many points was it? They allowed 38 points, but a lot of that was late. And the only time that they the stats were not that bad. There was, I think, a special teams touchdown, multiple turnovers. So they were able to contain Raiola for the most part in that game because he was holding the ball too long and not getting the ball out on time and missing some throws that were there. That's going to be the only way that Michigan State's got to have a chances. So if Michigan is able to dice them up with the screen game and get it to the suddenly dangerous Zach Marshall, Andrew Marsh, and get the ball out quick, it's going to be Swiss cheese. There's going to be holes everywhere.
This feels a lot like what I was saying about Michigan going into the Ohio State game last year. And I kind of asked Sherrone Moore about that comp, right? Like when there's not a ton left to play in the season, how much can a rivalry game bring the best out of the underdog, right? We saw Michigan bring their best, and we were talking about their path to victory last year. And there was one skinny, narrow path, and everything else was going to lead to defeat. And they towed that line, right? You have to win the turnover battle. You have to make long kicks. You have to have a timely fourth down play. You have to give your offense the ball in short fields. And Ohio State obliged in some of those ways, and Michigan took it in some of those ways, right? And so I think for that to happen this time, Michigan has won the turnover battle in 6 of 7 games, and they are 5-1 in those games. The only time they've lost was at Oklahoma, and that was Bryce Underwood's first true road start. We've seen some growth from him. Now he's been much better at home than the road, so you kind of wonder if there's anything there. But he's from the state. He's going to have a ton of people there. There will be Michigan fans there. He's grown up around this rivalry. He's seen it firsthand, no matter how dialed in he was as a high schooler or not. You've heard about it as a football player in the state your whole life. And so, Michigan, if Michigan doesn't turn the ball over, I'm not sure I see a way that Michigan State can win this game.
I completely agree. So let's just get right to it. We'll go right into our picks here. I don't want to spoil it, but Michigan State 14.5 point favorites, 14.5-point spread. You picked Michigan State. How come? Is that just a spread play? Well, let's just jump right into it.
It's a spread play. That's across a key number, 14.5, giving me the hook. I've lost on the hook. I'll reset these records because I was too embarrassed to do it. And previously, I'm now 19-20. I am 4-10 in my last 3 weeks. So it should make Michigan fans feel great that I'm picking Michigan State. We're just crumbling. But I think 4 of those losses are by 1 point or less. Just can't buy one right now. So I'm going to try to use the numbers and to my advantage here. And also, I think Michigan State was a 27-ish point underdog last week. They were down 28 late. They kicked a field goal to cover. They're not afraid of they covered late against USC. They're not afraid of the ugly cover. And so, say they're down 21 in the fourth quarter and Childs leads a late meaningless touchdown drive, or they're down 17 and then there's a sack on 3rd and long that makes it 4th and longer. So Michigan State's like, well, we're not going to go for it on 4th and 22. But we can just kick this field goal. And so I just think there's a ton of room in the back door there. Or say they get up, right? Like they receive, they get up 7-0, and then they just kind of hold it. Like they just don't get bombed the rest of the way. Like they lose handily. I couldn't possibly pick Michigan State to win this game. And like I said, there's like just the narrowest of paths. But I can see them keeping it in 2 scores by hook or by crook.
It's funny you say that. That's basically what Michigan State has done the last few weeks. I can't remember how many weeks it goes back, but they've scored on their opening drive several games in a row here. They come out and they were winning 10-7 against Indiana, right? They were winning 10-7. I could see it going similar to that for sure. I think that's a good call.
And Michigan, very quickly, Michigan has given up opening drives against Oklahoma, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and USC. So 4 times this year, Michigan has given up early points.
So here's how I see the game going. I think Michigan State and Michigan, it's going to be similar to that Washington first half where it's kind of like the early rounds of a boxing match, just 2 teams kind of feeling each other out. And Michigan is never really going to be in danger of losing. Maybe Michigan State is winning 10-7 or 7-3 or something along those lines. And then as the game goes along and Michigan State has to continue to execute, they will fail to do so. And Michigan will, Michigan State's going to be desperate, as we've discussed. Some of that's going to turn into turnovers, maybe a fumble 6, a pick 6, a punt return touchdown. Special teams have been a problem for MSU the last few weeks. And I think that Michigan ends up covering that. I liked it better at 14. I gave you the extra hook. I know it's going to end up coming back to burn me, but hey, you know what? I wanted to stick with my gut on that one. I think that it's just really hard to pick Michigan State in any fashion right now, having as in my editing capacity, watching both teams. It's just like, what is Michigan State giving you to pick them outside of some good Childs drives, right? So maybe Michigan State keeps it close early, but I think ultimately it's going to be a runaway Michigan victory. So, and that's going to be, like I mentioned, this Michigan State crowd is not going to be all in. This is going to be an angsty crowd, right? So if things start going the wrong way, it's almost could be a disadvantage to a degree where it's like the fans are going to be booing. Who knows what they're going to be chanting about Jonathan Smith if things get ugly. I think that could almost hurt Michigan State to a degree as far as late game spread. First half, everyone's going to be all in. You've seen this rivalry, Michigan basketball, when Michigan State's great, vice versa. The crowd is always going to be in it to the start of these games. But by the end, I think this crowd is going to be working against Michigan State. You know what I mean?
No, could be. I think if this is Ann Arbor, they get bombed, like big time. But I'm giving them the benefit. I mean, really, it's the line. It's the half. The Vegas has a sucker in me. They got their fish hook right in my lip.
All right, let's move on to some other big games this weekend. Ole Miss at Oklahoma. I mean, man, I don't even think it's comparable. The SEC this year is the best conference as it has been in the last several years, top to bottom. Ole Miss plays Georgia last week, and now they're playing at Oklahoma. It's just brutal. And we looked at Oklahoma's schedule after they play. They still have to play Alabama, right? Vandy played. No, it was LSU's schedule I was looking at. LSU played, Vandy lost. Then they play Texas A&M and Alabama after that. It's just, there's just no freebies in there, right? So an Ole Miss squad who kept it fairly close, but lost by 8 to Georgia, now at Oklahoma, 4.5-point underdogs. Who do you like in this one?
I'm disgusted. This is a total spite play. One of the aforementioned half-point losses was I had Ole Miss plus 7.5 last week. They're up 9. in the fourth quarter. Andrew's one win of last week.
Hey, you had one win too, pal. Don't be looking down on me.
I know, but I should have had two. That should have been my second. I should have been 2-2. But I felt like I was on the right side of that the whole way. And so this is total spite play. There's no analysis here. Oklahoma.
Are you still mad about how I talked you into John Mateer in Oklahoma in his valiant return to the Cotton Bowl?
I didn't want to bring it up. I have three half-point losses and then one flip because you talked me into it, and I'm 0-4 in those tight games. So we're still seeing the board. That's what I'm telling myself.
I gave you the half point on Michigan State. I gave you the Michigan half point when.
See, I'd love Michigan to win by 14 now. That'd be fantastic.
I'm going Ole Miss. Oklahoma, one of their weaknesses on offense is being able to run the ball. Ole Miss can't stop the run, so it's actually a decent matchup for Ole Miss. I'm going to go with the Rebels amidst the noise about Lane Kiffin going to Florida. I think that they're able to rally and beat Oklahoma this is basically elimination game for both teams at this point, right? So huge game, huge SEC game. And it's maybe not even, it's probably the best game, but there's another really good one we're going to get to in a little bit here. Second SEC game on the schedule, Missouri at Vanderbilt. Vandy, man, what the heck? This is not your dad's Vanderbilt. It's crazy. I keep wanting to doubt them, but they just keep winning. Beat LSU last week. Do you think they take care of business against Mizzou?
Yeah, this won't be the week I doubt them. Mizzou did not look good last week. I mean, they barely eked out a win. I was watching it late night. I'm getting
Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn. Okay. Yeah. Oh, God. That first OT where neither team scored, just so ugly. And I was mixing that up with Texas, Kentucky. I was watching that slop fest as well.
Same thing, overtime, right? Texas won in OT.
Yep. And because Kentucky got stuffed at the 1. They had a 2nd and goal at the 2, and they got stuffed 3 straight times. I digress. College game day is there. I mean, Nashville is going to be electric. They haven't had a game like this maybe ever. So, and they only have to win by 2.5. Yeah, I'll take them to win by a field goal. Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to pick against Vandy coming off a huge win against LSU. They were favored against LSU. It was one of the first times they were favored against LSU and God knows how long. And they found a way to win, right? Well, I was a little worried about them getting up for 2 weeks in a row. And then you have college game day coming to town, an absolutely massive matchup again. And I'm done doubting Diego Pavia in that Vandy organization, man. Jordan and I, my wife and I watched the SEC Netflix show. Did you watch any of that? And dude, you can't come away feeling like watching the Vandy episode without feeling completely different about the direction of that program. It was like, man, I think this is not like a fluky situation. I think they might actually be really turning this thing around. So encourage you to do so if you want to watch some college football type stuff on Netflix. So yeah, we both got Vandy in that one. Illinois at Washington, kind of a really down week for the Big Ten. That's why a lot of people thought that Michigan State and Michigan might be at that noon kickoff, but they did not get that game. So Illinois is a 4.5 point favorite over the Huskies, who Wolverines fans just saw last week. Who do you like in this one?
4.5 point dog.
Who's a dog?
Illinois dog. 4.5 points.
Did I say Illinois? Oh,
you did. Well, no problem.
Apologies.
No, just wanted to make sure that.
Illinois is a 4.5 point underdog. Yep.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be taking them to win by 4.5 points on the road, but I will.
What? The funny thing is, if you swing a point spread by 9, it actually does make you feel differently about it.
Yeah, no. I'm taking Illinois. Their 2 losses are to Ohio State and Indiana, who are the top 2 teams in the country. Washington is not one of the top 2 teams in the country. It's a good team, and yes, we know going out west is hard, but Illinois comes off a bye. They're not on some short week. They're not going to have to break it up. They have been preparing for this. It will be 13, 14 days at that point. And, how many times have I called myself a Luke Altmaier slappy? I've never supported Brett Bielema before this year. I don't know why I suddenly got on that train, but now I just can't get off the ride. And so keep it tight. We'll go with the Niner.
I think Illinois is pretty much in that class. So we talked about where Michigan is, right? Like good, not great. And I think Washington might be more mediocre than that. So I think that similar to what happened last week, Washington just kind of runs out of juice and isn't able to beat a team who is solid and able to ball control like Illinois. So I like the Illini in that one as well. All right, last game on the spread here. Texas A&M at LSU. Night game in Baton Rouge. All of it just kind of feels LSU, right? But the Aggies a 2.5 point favorite. So who do you like here?
Yeah, Death Valley at night might be the toughest place to play in America in any situation. Their back is against the wall, couple losses. This could get them back into CFP realm, hope. optimism. Like they still got there's a ways to go. A&M, one of the last undefeated teams. I think they're still undefeated, right? I'm pretty sure.
Let me get IT on that.
Yeah, yeah, please do. But in any event, I just got LSU. It's bounced back after up down theory really applies more to the NFL, but they just lost a tough one to Vandy in a spot game. This feels like a spot game in the other way. It's actually the game I feel worst about, which is probably going to be the only one I win this week. LSU.
It is a tough one, right? Because I think Texas A&M is a much better team than LSU. It feels like we're approaching quitting time for LSU, but I'm going to pick A&M in spite of the Death Valley night game. I just think that I don't see it with this LSU team. And I was early in on them. I liked them a lot coming off that Clemson win. I bought in too much early and they've been basically nothing but unimpressive since then. And I think that A&M already showed this year winning on the road at Notre Dame that they can win on the road against good teams. So I think they continue that. They knock off LSU and stay on top of the SEC. And I did check it while you were talking. Texas A&M is in fact undefeated. They're in first place in the SEC, and one of the only teams still undefeated in the conference alongside. Well, Alabama, Ole Miss, conference. Okay, no, Alabama and Texas A&M are the only undefeated teams in conference, and A&M is the only undefeated team overall.
But I'm looking at it. They don't have an impressive win by 6 at home over Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, who just fired its coach. They only won by 3 at Arkansas, who had already fired their coach. Right?
Are we not counting at Notre Dame as an impressive win?
No, that was obviously a very impressive win, but really felt like Notre Dame choked that game away. I'm not going to lie. I remember watching that one, but beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame is a good win, but they haven't run some SEC gauntlet is my point. And LSU might be the best team they've played in the league.
And they're not going to. We just talked about how the SEC schedule is as brutal as it gets, right? A&M is the only exception, I think.
Yeah.
They played. Here, I'll just run through it real quick before we move on to some quick basketball talk. They've played in conference. They've played Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, and Arkansas. Probably 4, if not the 4 worst teams in the conference. Then they play at LSU, who's down. Missouri, who we both just said we think are going to lose to Vandy. South Carolina, who has been a huge disappointment, and then end the year with Texas. So, who has also been a disappointment.
Who is a huge disappointment.
That is as lucky as you can get, and still not easy. That's still tougher than Michigan or Michigan State schedules in conference this year, but it's about as easy as it gets in SEC. All right, let's move on to some hoops talk. You were at the exhibition game. The Michigan lost to Cincinnati, an absolute shootout of all shootouts, 198, I think was the final, right? And you got your first look at Yaxel and some of the new pieces under Dusty May. So let's close with some hoops thoughts and what went wrong against a Cincinnati team that Michigan should be expected to beat, right?
Yeah, well, I think what went wrong, quote unquote, is that Michigan was missing its 2 best big men, not named Yaxel. I don't really even consider him a big man. He's like a jack of all trades. He might guard the 1 sometimes. He can literally play 1 through 5. He won't play any 5. But no Adai Mara, no Morris Johnson Jr., both out, minor injuries, expected to be back for the opener November 4th against Oakland. They're hopeful. And so what they had to do is they had to play Will Cheddar at the 5 after they asked him to drop 30 pounds this offseason so he could play the 3. So he was undersized. He was even more undersized. And then he went against a big Cincinnati front line. So that was just a really tough spot. They got bombed early. They fell behind by 20. And they absolutely outplayed Cincinnati in a major way in the second half. But it's hard to dig out of a 20-point hole, right? And they cut it to 2 about 4 different times and just could not quite come up with a stop. It didn't help that every other possession the entire game had free throws, 83 free throws. I've never seen that many in a regulation game ever in my life. Michigan, probably a good thing. You don't want to shoot like that, but they were impressive at the line. 41 of 48, 85% on almost 50 free throws. That's a really good sign just for when tight games come down to the wire. LJ Kaysen was working his way back from an injury, but the story of the game was Yaxel on the board. He was 31. He had 31 points on 10 of 16 shooting. He made all 9 of his free throws and 12 rebounds. And then today, Dusty May said the staff felt like he actually didn't have a very good game. That is they said they feel he can impact winning more than he did. And Dusty May, one of my favorite, there's a lot of things I like about Dusty May. Perhaps my favorite is he does not just say things just to say them. If he says something, there's a reason. He is telling you the truth. This is actually what's happening. And if he's not going to, he'll just say, I'm not going to like talk about that directly. Like he will directly say, I'm not going to answer that. But he kind of brought that up unprompted.
Those are interesting to me because, I mean, that probably partially illustrates why he's coming back to college, right? I mean, a player who can score 31 on 10 of 16 and has his size and his skill, you'd think would be in the NBA, right? But clearly there's something that coaches on both levels think he has to work on, right? Maybe is it his defensive positioning? Is it his intensity level? What is that, just for the many Michigan fans who maybe have not watched him play yet?
One of the top things was shooting, his outside shooting, because he's 6'8", right? So he's going to have to play the wing in the NBA. And so you're going to have to make threes at a higher clip. He was only 2 of 7, but one or two of them like just kind of rimmed in and out or just off the back heel. Like it looked fine. It did not look like, oh, like this guy's not going to be able to shoot. Like I think he'll shoot it fine this year. Another is, was sort of, and this was not even like a knock on him. It's a knock against him, which is a subtle but important distinction. And it was sort of his practice habits, right? I mean, he came from Indiana Western JUCO and then UAB. These are not winning environments. These are not basketball powerhouses. Like he had not learned to play at that level. The conditioning, the mental, the physical, the rest, the rehab, all of it. What it takes to be an NBA player or to even be a Division I high major basketball player. And he's learning that at Michigan. Dusty also said today, he said his practice habits were not up to Michigan standards, and they were not up to the standard that Yaxel needs to hold himself to. And it's not like this guy is so friendly for someone who was just named a preseason All-American, who is going to be a first-round NBA pick next year. He's got a great personality. He's already bought into the locker room. Dusty has said he overpasses. What was shocking is he didn't have an assist on the game, but I saw him in practice. I mean, there were a number of times where I'm like, why is he not shooting this? Like, I mean, he's just swinging. We saw 2 practices, and I felt like he was passing a ton in both of them. And so this is not some me guy at all. But and so that's what I mean, like practice habits. It's not like he's lazy or like he's like an I'm too good for this guy. It's just there are levels to this, and he is learning the next level of it. And I think that is a scary, scary thing for the rest of the league. This dude is legit.
Yep. And, Michigan, say what you want about the basketball team last year. They played hard consistently. They were a team who really wasn't, they were not like an underachieving, like, oh, I don't remember many times that they just looked flat, outside of a few games. The game at Purdue, right, was a flat game, but they were a team who played hard. So you should figure that out pretty quickly, or you'll be a major outcast, because that's not a group who, lollygags for sure.
No, and he won't. And then my last note on this game would be actually a quick one. I have on our little show sheet, who else impressed? Winters Grady. Watch out for Winters Grady. It is an elite name. And it's going to be tough to break into this backcourt rotation that has Elliot Cadeau, former 5-star, Trey McKinney, McDonald's All-American, Namari Burnett, Roddy Gale, both upperclassmen, senior, proven guys. One was also an McDonald's All-American. And then you got Winters Grady. So he's 5 of 5. When they need some long-range shooting, he has the best pure shot on the team, right on par with Namari Burnett. Like, this dude is like I remember at these practices, I was just like, he has the prettiest shot of them all. Like this dude is just wet. And he went 2 of 4, hit a couple big threes in his debut. And so just don't be surprised. Like, he's got to hold his own on defense. And there's got to be a reason to not have one of those 4 other guys who I mentioned in the game. But if Michigan's going small, they're trying to space things. You could have a McKinney who helps give you size at the 1, Grady at the 2, and then, there's so many options. You could go at the 3. You could go bigger, and you could go Yaxel, and then Johnson and Mara, and there'd be plenty of size on the court to overcome Grady's like sort of more demure stature. But if you need some shooting, this guy, just put a pin in it, because I was not expecting him to have a major role this year. It's just a super deep team. Like, there would have been Michigan teams that needed him. I didn't know how much they'd need him. They're going to need his shooting. So book it. And then the last thought is any concern for Trey McKinney? 0 of 7 shooting, 0 of 6 from 3, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers. The answer is no. This was a rough day, obviously. But Dusty May said, I bet that will be the worst stat line, the worst performance Trey McKinney ever has in a Michigan uniform. How long has he been waiting for this moment, right? He's been committed for a year. He's from the state. He's the first Flint guy to pick Michigan since Glenn Rice in 40 years. There's a ton to prove. All the eyes are on him, especially without some of those big name transfers in. And he was forcing it a little bit. You could see it. and that's going to happen, right? But when is the time for that to happen? In an exhibition that doesn't matter. And so I think he got a lot of those jitters out. I bet he scores 10 points at MSG when they play St. John's over the weekend, which is at the exact same time as Michigan plays Michigan State. So we're going to have someone...
Brilliant scheduling.
Yes, we're going to have someone with eyes, with the desk with eyes on that game, and I'll have to watch the replay, which I will do, but just can't watch it live. And so that's overall everything. Can't judge the rebounding because they were missing bigs. One of their freshmen pressed, another one surprised. Yaxel is a dog. Namari didn't shoot it great. Ronnie Gale created a lot. There were a ton of turnovers. So, I mean, we could do a whole pod on it, but we're already over an hour. So I think we'll wrap there, and we will get into hoop season, and I'm excited for it. There's a ton of juice around this team.
Yeah, there is. It's a fun team. Lots of interesting guys. I mean, they're like 10, 11 deep, man. It's crazy. That team is loaded and should be in the running for a Big Ten title this year. So we'll definitely be following hoops. A brief crossover, but in the meantime, we're still going to keep our eyes and ears mostly on the Michigan football team for the next few weeks as they wrap up their season here, starting this weekend with Michigan State. Just a little note here. We are going to be doing a live stream with the Spartan Speak guys, a little crossover episode. So if you want to hear some good banter between Chris Laurie, Graham Couch, Tony, and myself, a little beat on beat crossover, please join us for we're planning to do it on Wednesday. So if you happen to listen to this, you made it all the way to the end of this, and you want some more Michigan State talk, please join us on Wednesday. It should be a lot of fun. We hope to hear from you guys then. Thank you, as always, to our editor, Bill Bradley, the sports editor for our department here, the editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery-Nichols, and to Robin Chan for himself making it to the end of this episode. We appreciate everybody who makes it all possible. So we'll talk to you guys soon, and enjoy the game this weekend.